Hey, how's it going guys? Solar here. This week, Zero Hour has returned, and with it, the craftable version of Outbreak Defected. As a solo player at heart, I want to create a video to help anybody without fire teams complete the legend difficulty of this mission solo. Also, by anybody, I mean on any class too. As you read from the title, this is a guide for all classes. So, here's how the video is organized. There will be 4 sections total, 1 for the platforming section and 3 for each class. The platforming section will include the path itself and other tips I have to save extra time. Each class section will include a suggested build of my choice, which I will use in the background gameplay. I will also provide commentary on how the build works and the strategies I used in my runs. To further reinforce the strength of these builds, I did not use solo operative nor swap to a maneuver setup for the platforming section. My runs were also not perfect, filled with a handful of unnecessary deaths and a couple missed rockets. Another thing, soloing Legend Zero Hour is difficult. Very difficult. However, I do think after watching this guide, it will stand no match against you. If I could do it with handicaps, you can definitely do it. Okay, here we go. Clean traversal of the platforming in this mission is an extremely crucial component to your success, as every second counts. I want to highlight that I highly encourage swapping to a maneuver loadout to increase your speed. This may include Eager Edge, Mountaintop, as well as armors like Lion Rampants and Stompies. On this part, go to the corner platform left of the wall with a lever on it. Pull the lever on that platform, then exit diagonally from there. Be careful with these jumps. Remember that dying dents your time. On the wall here, take your time. Not too much time, but enough to make it to the end safely. Wait for the floating platforms to begin their animation before jumping here. Don't forget to jump at the end of the slide. Kill these shanks with your mountaintop. It's a one tap. For Trevor, I recommend starting with one side, then crossing the gap and finishing the other. For instance, I recommend doing R1 and R2, then crossing the middle and doing L1, L2. However, depending where Trevor is, feel free to change this up. Do not take the elevator here. They take way too long. Instead, jump up the wall like this. In here, run into the wall with a symbol and it'll open. For the incinerator room, the path changes daily, with each being unique to the current enemy burn, void, solar, or arc. The paths for legend and normal are each different as well. Now, just jump into the hole. If you get here with more than 8 minutes remaining, you should be good to go. Don't forget to rally. And here is the boss. Onwards to the combat portion. Alright Titans, I found a Lordly Splendor Sunbreaker build to be the best here. We're going to be taking advantage of restoration through the use of sunspots, as well as healing grenades. For our abilities, make sure to use Rally Barricade because it has a lower base cooldown than Towering Barricade. For your melee, I recommend using Throwing Hammer, but it's really up to you. Make sure to use Healing Grenade to keep up the restoration. For aspects, make sure to use Soul Invictus for more sunspots, as well as Roaring Flames to help with our super. For fragments, use Ember of Mercy, Ember of Empyrean, Ember of Ashes, and Ember of Torches. Ember of Mercy is going to help us grant more restoration every time we pick up a Fire Sprite. Empyrean is going to help build into our restoration timer. Ember of Ashes is going to help us buff our Dragon's Breath and incandescent weapons. And Ember of Torches is going to allow us to get Radiant every time we bonk enemies with our Throwing Hammer. For weapons, your kinetic slot, I found Mountaintop to be the best here. There are a lot of mech enemies like Shanks, Briggs, and tanks, and the Mountaintop's high direct damage is super useful. My role was Recombination Autoloading. I just found Recombination to be the best here because you're going to be getting a lot of kills with other stuff, which is going to help build into this. For your primary, I recommend using Zali's Bane if you have it. Explosive Payload Incandescent works wonders in this mission, but if you don't have it, any weapon with Incandescent or Explosive Payload, or both, is great. For your heavy, make sure to use Gallahorn and Dragon's Breath. We're going to be using Gallahorn for the first few rooms. Gallahorn's high blast radius and Wolfpack rounds are going to help clear out those enemies as fast as possible, and its solar element, which is going to help build into our Ember of Empyrean. For the final boss, we're going to be using Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath is super useful for the tanks, and it's also useful because of High Octane. High Octane is going to allow Dragon's Breath to auto-reload itself after you cause a few ignitions on the target, which it will do after it sits on the target for some time. For armor mods, I'll start with the helmet. I actually used double hands-on and harmonic siphon, but after doing more runs of this, I highly recommend using heavy ammo finder. Because we're going to be taking advantage of Gallahorn, we actually won't be using Bog Hammer too much, so we won't be able to take advantage of hands-on often. Plus, heavy ammo finder is going to allow us to get more heavy ammo for our rockets, which is great. For arms, it's really up to you, but I used heavy-handed, focusing strike, and harmonic reloader. For chest piece, make sure to use triple arc damage resistance. Most of the enemies in this mission are going to be dealing arc damage, so we want to run triple resistance here. Also, make sure to have a separate chest piece with triple solar reserves on. When we first load into the mission, we're actually going to spawn with full ammo, and if we have the reserves chest piece on, we're going to have more Gallahorn shots. We're also going to be using this chest piece before we rally at the final boss. This is going to allow us to get more ammo for our Dragon's Breath. Don't forget to swap back to your original chest piece though. For our boots, you're going to want to use Recuperation, Solar Weapon Surge, and actually a Solar Scavenger mod. I ended up using double Solar Weapon Surge, but after doing more runs, I found Solar Scavenger to work wonders. For our mark, you're going to want to use Time Dilation to help keep up the solar damage buff, Utility Kickstart to help make sure that we always have Rally Barricades for sunspots, and Bomber, just to help keep up those heal grenades. For your seasonal artifact, you're going to want to make sure you run Flint Striker, Kindling Trigger, Blast Radius, Wish into Being, Revitalizing Blast, Raise the Precision, and Solar Operative. Remember, I did not use Solar Operative in my runs, but I highly recommend using it for yours. And yeah, that about does it for the Titan build. Let's move on to the combat section. Alrighty hunters, you're up next. In this build, we're going to be taking advantage of Celestial Nighthawk along with the restoration powers of Gunslinger. Starting off with abilities here, you're going to want to run Gambler's Dodge so we can get back those throwing knives. Then for our knives, we're going to be using Knife Trick as they apply Scourge. We're going to be using Healing Grenade to keep up Restoration. For aspects, we're going to be using Knock 'em Down and On Your Mark. Knock 'em Down is going to enhance our Solar Super as well as allow us to refund our knives. On Your Mark is more of an optional aspect, but I liked it as it improves my reload. For fragments, you're going to want to run Ember of Torches, Ember of Searing, Ember of Empyrean, Ember of Ashes, and Ember of Mercy. Ember of Torches is going to allow us to get Radiant whenever we throw our knives. Ember of Searing is going to be creating more fire sprites every time we defeat a Scourge target. Ember of Empyrean is going to help build up our restoration timer. Ember of Ashes is going to help us apply more Scourge to targets. And Ember of Mercy is going to be allowing us to have more restoration, as every fire sprite we pick up will grant restoration. For your super, you're going to want to run Golden Gun Marksman as well. Moving on to weapons, I found Mountaintop to be the best choice for our kinetic slot, as Mountaintop's direct damage is really good, especially against those mechs, like Briggs, Shanks, and tanks. My role was Recombination and Autoloading. I found Recombination to be really good here, as we're going to be getting a lot of kills with our weapons and abilities, so Recombination is going to be continuously building up. Moving on to our energy slot, I highly recommend using Zelly's Bane if you have it. Explosive Payload and Incandescent works wonders here, but if you don't have Zelly's Bane, another solar energy with Incandescent or Explosive Payload or both should do just fine. Moving on to our heavy, make sure to have Gallahorn and Dragon's Breath. We're going to be using Gallahorn for the beginning rooms, as Gallahorn's high blast radius and Wolfpack rounds is going to make clearing those enemies super easy. Plus, it's also solar, which is going to help build up our Ember of Empyrean. Dragon's Breath is going to be our weapon of choice for the final boss room. Dragon's Breath comes in super useful as it absolutely destroys the tanks and also has high octane. Basically what high octane does is that once we ignite nearby targets, it's going to auto reload this weapon for us. So all we have to do is shoot Dragon's Breath onto a target, wait a few seconds, and it's going to auto reload. Alright, moving on to armor mods. I'm going to start off with the helmet. You're going to want to run Hands On, Heavy Ammo Finder, and Solar Siphon. Solar Siphon is going to allow us to create more orbs. Heavy Ammo Finder is going to allow us to get more heavy. And Hands On is just going to help us get bonus super energy with our knife kills. For your gauntlets, you're going to want to run Heavy Handed, Impact Induction, and Solar Reloader. But really, these are really up to you. Heavy Handed I recommend the most, but these two are really optional. For your chest piece, you're going to want to run Triple Arc Resistance, as most of the enemies in this mission are going to be dealing arc damage, so we want to be running triple resistance here. Also, make sure to have a separate chest piece with triple solar reserves, as when we load into the mission, we will be spawning with full ammo, so if we load in with this equipped, we will get extra ammo, and the same goes for the Rally Banner at the end. For our boots, you're going to want to run Recuperation, Solar Weapon Surge, and Solar Scavenger. Solar Scavenger is going to allow us to get more heavy, Solar Weapon Surge is going to allow us to do just a tiny bit more damage, and Recuperation is going to build into our survivability. And then moving on to our class item, we're going to be wanting to use Reaper for more orb generation, Powerful Attraction to help us collect orbs, and Bomber just to help keep our uptime on our healing grenades. Then for stats, you're going to want to prioritize Resilience first, then Discipline, and the last stat is really your choice. For seasonal artifact, make sure to use Flint Striker, Kindling Trigger, Wish into Being, Blast Radius, Revitalizing Blast, Raise of Precision, and Solar Operative. In my runs though, I did not use Solar Operative, but please use this in your runs. Alright, and that about does it for the Hunter build. Let's move on to the combat section. Alright, last but not least, Warlocks. Alright, Warlocks, you're going to be taking advantage of Sunbracers along with Daybreak. Why Daybreak instead of Well, you might ask? Well, remember, this mission is timed and we need to kill all the enemies as fast as we possibly can. I just found Daybreak to be a lot better because it's a roaming super that can help clear the enemies faster, rather than Well, which you're just going to be sitting still. For your abilities, you're going to want to use Phoenix Dive. Phoenix Dive is going to allow us to proc Restoration ×2 because we're going to be using Heat Rises. For your melee, I found Incinerator Snap to be the absolute best here for Sunbreaker procs. Obviously use Solar Grenades for Sunbracers. Make sure to use Touch of Flame to buff our Solar Grenades. And then, like I said before, make sure to use Heat Rises. Heat Rises is going to allow us to actually proc Restoration ×2 along with Phoenix Dive. For Fragments, make sure to use Ember of Empyrean, Ember of Ashes, Ember of Torches, and Ember of Searing. Empyrean will help us build up that Restoration. Ember of Ashes will buff our Incandescent weapon as well as our Dragon's Breath and Solar Grenades. Ember of Torches will allow us to get Radiant every time we proc Sunbracers. And Ember of Searing is just going to help grant us melee energy and also create a Fire Sprite whenever we defeat Scourge targets. For your weapons, for the Connect slot, I found Mountaintop to be the best. There are a lot of mechs in this mission, including Briggs, Shanks, and Tanks, and I found Mountaintop's high direct damage to be very, very useful here. My role was a recombination auto-loading role. I found recombination to be super useful because we're going to be killing all those enemies with our solar grenades, heavy ammo, and primary ammo. So recombinations is always going to be building up. I found auto-loading to be pretty useful because this is going to reload it when we're using our other weapons, but it is not needed. For your energy weapon, I use Zoe's Bane with explosive payload and incandescent. I found this to be the absolute best here, but if you just have another solar weapon with incandescent or explosive payload or both, I recommend using that. For a heavy, make sure to have Gallowhorn and Dragon's Breath. We're going to be taking advantage of Gallowhorn's high blast radius and Wolfpack rounds to clear all the enemies in the beginning as fast as possible. And it also does solar damage, which is going to help build into our Ember of Empyrean. For the final boss room, we're going to be using Dragon's Breath. I found Dragon's Breath to be super useful against the tanks and also just to shoot and forget. Because Dragon's Breath will auto-reload itself with high octane, you can just shoot it into a boss and keep on clearing the rest of the enemies and it'll just auto-reload for you. The recent reserves buff to Dragon's Breath is also super useful. Alright, for armor, for our helmet, you want to make sure to use 2 Solar Siphon mods as well as a heavy ammo finder. For gauntlets, I used Harmonic Reloader to help the reload on my solar weapons, and make sure to use Firepower and heavy-handed. For our chest piece, make sure to run triple arc damage resistance. Most of the enemies in this mission will be dealing arc, like the Tracer Shanks and Vandals, so you want to make sure to have arc resistance. Also, make sure to have a separate chest piece with triple solar reserves. When we load into the mission, we will be spawning with full ammo, so if you equip this and then reload in, you will get more ammo in your Gallowhorn. We're going to do the same thing before rattling at the boss, and we'll also get more rockets for our Dragon's Breath. For our boots, make sure to run Solar Scavenger, Recuperation, and Solar Weapon Surge. I found Solar Weapon Surge just to be kind of nice, just to have a extra buff to our damage. For your class item, run Time Dilation, Powerful Attraction, and Outreach. Powerful Attraction will allow our Phoenix Dives to collect orbs nearby, and Time Dilation is just going to help us keep up that solar weapon damage buff. Then for stats, you're going to want to focus on the Resilience first, then Discipline, and then Recovery. For your artifact mod, you're going to want to make sure you run Flint Striker, Kindling Trigger, Blast Radius, Wish into Being, Revitalizing Blast, Raise the Precision, and Solar Operative. Remember, I did not use Solar Operative in my runs, but I highly recommend using it for yours. Alright, and this about does it for the Warlock build. Let's get into the combat section. Thank you for reaching the end of the video. Remember, these builds and strategies are not the best out there, but only the ones I found to work the best for me. Feel free to change up some aspects of them if it better fits your playstyle. Also, this is my first time creating a longer, more detailed video with multiple parts. If you enjoyed the style and would like to see more content like this, let me know by leaving a like or sharing your thoughts down in the comments below. Well, that about does it. I hope this guide helped you out, and good luck out there. See ya!